Hey, Broker Nation. In this episode, I have Su Hameed. Sue is a mortgage broker based out of Ottawa, Ontario. And Sue has been in the business for 5 years, and every single year she's continued to grow, expand her business. And Sue takes a non-traditional approach to her business. So most people tell you you need to build real estate partners, realtors, which I'm a big believer in. But Sue was like, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to do networking events and go out and build my community. And so Sue shares how she did that and some advice on how to do networking. So I'm personally it's not my strength, but she shares some really good tips on how you can become better at networking. So check out this interview with Sue. I think you're going to love it. Also, if you're a mortgage broker looking to do a private loan in BC or Alberta, check out Pioneer West Acceptance Corp. Styles, Stewart, and the guys there have been huge supporters of our community for a long time, and they're absolutely awesome to deal with on private mortgages. So reach out to Styles, tell them that you heard about them from I Love Mortgage Brokering, and check out this episode with Sue. Hey, Sue, welcome to the show.
Hi, Scott. Thanks for having me on.
So I heard about you. You're a big producer out of Ottawa, and I had heard about your story a little bit. It was sort of your progression of like growth every single year in your business, and how you have sort of an unconventional approach as well as unconventional wisdom, I guess, in terms of how you've done it. So I really want to chat with you today about that. So why don't you tell me a little bit about how you got into the mortgage business? And I'd love to hear sort of your story over the last few years of what that looked like.
So basically, I got into the mortgage business after being in a family business for a very long time. And things were changing in the family business. And I started a family. I had young children. So I was looking to move into something for myself and to start something on my own.
What kind of family business was it?
So my father owned a couple of different businesses. He did custom office furniture, like high-end, and also kitchen cabinets. So we were supplying to a lot of the builders in the city at the time.
Okay.
And my dad was getting old, and we wanted him to retire, and we wanted him to retire the businesses as well, so that we could, all of us, branch out on our own and do our own thing.
And okay, so 2013 you started. How was the first year?
First year it was rough. I mean, huge, steep learning curve, right? Because I didn't come from a bank. I didn't have a financial background. When I started, my son was 2 years old, and my daughter was 3 months old. So I was juggling two small children and trying to find the time to learn the basics, learn the foundation, and also get the word out there of what I'm doing.
So what in the first year, and then so how did you do in terms of, would you mind sharing what you did in production in that first year?
Yeah, so in production, I guess it was 8 deals. I think that equates to maybe 2 million in the Ottawa market.
Right.
And it was a full year. We're talking 7 months.
Okay, and so how did you fill your time? So somebody who's in, what I love is if somebody's in that stage right now, how did you fill your time in that first year?
So I had to try to get out and talk to people. So I went to networking events. I used social media at the beginning as well to get the word out there. Because, all of a sudden people know you for so long as doing one thing, and now you're jumping into something new, and I wanted to get the word out. So I would say main 2 points were social media and networking events.
Okay, and then how did it go in the next subsequent years? I mean, I know because I know the backstory, but so I'm sort of asking for our audience sake. But so tell me about the next couple of years. How did they go in terms of your production and sort of how things went?
Absolutely. So 2014, I did 8 million. That was the year where I was thinking, wow, this is amazing. I'm loving this. I see progress. I see a huge jump. 2015, I did 15 million. 2016, 25 million. And then in 2017, I jumped to 39 million.
Okay, so you basically had growth every single year. And then one of the things you had said in our pre-interview conversation is that one of the pieces of advice you were given was to chase realtors, which I am actually, if you do it properly, I think it can be a good strategy. But you're like, forget that. I'm not going to go after realtors. And so I'm always like, oh, interesting. This is like you're an anomaly, an outlier that so what was your, how did you do it? So how was your path to start building your business without using the traditional approach?
Yeah, so my rationale behind it of not chasing realtors was at the beginning, you're calling realtors, you're new, they know you're new. I could see all the other new agents in the office doing the same thing. So I said to myself, I'd rather build my foundation first and get really strong, and then hopefully the realtors will come, which is what's happening right now. So at the beginning, I focused a lot on going out and being productive, every single day. I would look at my weeks at the beginning on a Sunday night. And if I was not busy enough, I would find events or opportunities to participate in that would get me face to face in front of people.
So give me examples of what type of events and things would you go to?
So I was a part of a lot of ladies organizations in Ottawa, and for me that was a huge part of my business because women supporting women in business is huge. And I tapped into that really early on, knowing that if I could support other women in their businesses, they'd want to support me in my business. So I went to a lot of female business events, either breakfast meetings, lunch meetings, there was afternoon meetings, stuff like that. And then I would literally just go online and find different business networking events to click attend, and I would show up.
Right. Okay. So, and now just out of curiosity, you said you had a young family. So how, you must have had some kind of support. I don't imagine you left your kids in the car, right? You're like, hey,
No.
kids, you just stay in the car and I'll leave the window down a little bit for you. I know, I'm just joking. So how did you manage to have the bandwidth to go out and do the networking events? Because then how many hours a week would you say you spent on this in those early years when you had time?
In the early years, I would say starting in 2014 in year 2, I probably tried to attend at least 4 to 5 events a week. So we're talking, 2 hours each event. So let's say 10 hours a week. I had great support. My mom definitely helped me with my kids whenever I needed her to. I would drop them off if we had lender meetings or I had networking events. And my husband, also being self-employed, he was also flexible. So we basically made it work. And paperwork for me was typically after 9 p.m. when the kids were sleeping.
Right. So you just had to structure your days. Okay, so about 10 hours a week, and then you had some family support in order to allow you to go out and spend 10 hours a week. And okay, so personally, the way I'm wired, I'm not good at networking events. Like, it's just not my jam. If I go to a networking event, if I meet one person, I'm happy, I'll chat with them. And so tell me some of the things you did in order to make networking events successful, because it's like a foreign language to me.
Definitely. And they're not, it's uncomfortable. You're walking into a room of, 20, 30, 40 people. You don't know anybody. And you've got to come in and kind of just start mixing and mingling. So at the beginning, of course, it was a bit tougher, but as it became part of my routine, I got used to it. I am social, so I love to go out and talk to people. I would just mix and mingle. There was always like 20, 30 minutes of open networking. And then there would be more of a sit down formal part with most of the meetings, I would say. So in the mix and mingle, I would, try to at least talk to 5 or 6 people. I would always go up to them and ask them about their business and be interested in them. It was never about me. So I wouldn't go in there and say, hi, I'm a mortgage broker. Do you have anybody for me? That was never my approach. My approach was always to try to find common ground, to communicate and find out more about them. And then it led into, building a relationship, right?
Okay. So, and then, so you meet somebody, try to be interested in them, which is really good advice. So when they asked you what you did you have like a certain response that you would use that you found was effective?
Yeah, I would mix it up. I would just say a little bit about myself, being a mortgage agent at the time or broker now, and what I love about my business. So when talking about yourself and what you do, I think it's important to be passionate about it, like be excited about it. So if I'm sitting there saying I'm a mortgage agent and I have this dreadful look on my face and it looks like I hate what I'm doing, then no one's really going to want to work with me, right?
Mm-hmm. So you basically made sure that you would identify what you were, but sharing your passion and the love, because you're right. Let's get infectious in a good way. When somebody's passionate about something, they're like, oh man, my wife teaches sourdough and she's so excited about sourdough and, all these things. And I'm like, I'm interested in sourdough because you're so, crazy about it. Right. Plus,
Exactly.
plus I get to eat it every day, but I get what you're saying. So yeah, that's a really good distinction to make sure you bring passion to that. So then what other things would you do that would make those networking events effective?
Another thing I would do is I'd follow up. So I think the key thing when you're meeting people is you're gathering their cards, follow up afterwards. So if I made any connections with any people at the events and I thought that it could be a longer term referral relationship both ways, then I would reach out to them and set up a coffee meeting, one-on-one.
Okay. So, and I'm basically creating a little document here as we're talking, because I'm real good at this. I'm like, it's like I'm going to school on how to networking. So be interested, have a response, but make sure that you bring some passion to it, and then follow up in terms of, so were there people that you met and you were like, because sometimes I've gone to networking events, people are like, oh yeah, we should do coffee. And it's that whole, but they're full of crap and you're full of crap. And so you like, yeah, how do you make sure that you're actually going to follow through and then, Walk me through that.
Well, I think inevitably there's people that I've met over the years that, we've gone out for coffee or we've met, but it didn't go anywhere. But I always look at things in a bigger picture. So I feel that every time I've ever left my office or left the house and gone to one of these events, either it's a direct or indirect connection. So I meet somebody, I either end up doing business with them or someone close to them, or they end up somehow directing me to another person that becomes a great referral or a great client.
Okay. And then, so if let's say you meet somebody at a networking event and they have like a website business, so would you go meet anybody for coffee? Like if it was like, if they, another entrepreneur, another business owner, were you like somehow, were you segmenting or discriminate? I don't want to use the word discriminate, but you know what I'm saying? Like figure out who is strategic to meet with and who wasn't.
Yeah, it was definitely strategic. So I looked for businesses that kind of parallel us or that we would be able to establish some kind of relationship with. So, I mean, if I met realtors, obviously, if they were interested in meeting with me, I would talk to them, absolutely. Financial advisors, anybody in home and auto, accountants, stuff like that. Any businesses that didn't seem like it would be a direct relationship, I'd still keep in touch because down the road, they either need financing or they hear about somebody who needs it. And then in their mind, they're thinking, oh, well, I met that girl, Sue, at that event. Maybe I should connect her, right?
Okay. How did you stay in touch? What was so you met, let's say you meet somebody, they seem interesting, you go for coffee. Do you have a system? Was it just sort of, do you have a good memory for these things? And you just know when, I got to remember to bring this person back in? Or like, what was that like?
So at the beginning, I would meet people at these events. A lot of these events were stemmed off of social media. So the event itself was advertised there. Yeah. So I would connect with them on social media, which is the easiest way to stay connected because I'm very consistent on there. I always post, I share content, I share stories. So I find, I met somebody maybe 3 years ago and they'll message me, this year and say, I have a client for you, I need help, right? Now I have a little bit of a better system because I'm on a better platform CRM-wise where I can input the contacts and segment them into different categories like realtor or financial advisor, so I can keep in touch with them passively that way. So it would be a combination of both, the CRM and, of course, staying connected on social media.
So you would, if you met somebody at an event, you'd always try to friend them on Facebook or whatever so that now you get into their orbit? That's actually a really good idea. Yeah. Like from even if you didn't do coffee, mm-hmm. Adding to your social network is a great idea. Okay, so some of these events I'm sure you'd go to and you'd get a chance to do a little pitch, like a 30-second, hey, I'm awesome. So give me an example of what you did because the volume growth that you have is in my experience of 200 interviews I've done is very unusual for someone who has shunned the realtor path, right? Like who hasn't used the realtor path. So you must have a decent way to communicate your pitch. So what does that look like when you're in a room full of people and say, hey, I'm Sue and I do?
Exactly. Okay. Yeah. So I get up and I say, I'm Su Hameed, mortgage agent. I do residential and commercial financing. My ideal referral or client right now that I'm looking to help is anybody who's been declined by the bank or another mortgage broker. I will not leave a stone unturned until I find out if the deal is possible. So I would love to chat with those people.
So you basically go after the exact opposite of what I would go. I would I don't want to see those people. So, and then obviously the cool thing, we were talking before we came on this show, but the cool thing about that approach is that when you start to solve problems for those people that seem impossible, mm-hmm. more and more people, your reputation is going to spread. People are going to be like, oh my gosh, you got to talk to Sue. She's amazing because she will try every which angle to try to get this approved. And then I could see why that would compound. So you really stuck, but you did tough files. So these are not like, they're not like simple AAA, 780 beacon teachers, 20% down. They're like challenging.
No, I've done crazy files where even everybody around me, everyone in my office would say, there's no way you're getting that done. And that would fuel me even more to figure out a way to get it done.
You don't like to hear no, do you? You're just like, I don't believe it. No, and I'm not buying what you're selling. So, so what percentage of your business is A versus B? So like, would you categorize?
Yeah, the funny thing about that is it has changed year to year and it continues to change. Last year, I would say I probably did anywhere from 60% A, 40% B in private. Mm-hmm. The year before that, I probably did more private than A stuff, more B stuff than A stuff. And then this year, I think I'm back to like a 60-40 maybe 65-35 split on 65% being A business and the rest of it being B or private. Because what's happening now is that when the word gets out, even someone might be an A client, but their realtor or their friend is telling them you have to go see Sue because you're for sure going to get it done with her. And
Right.
it can be the cookie cutter file. It's so simple, but they think that they need.
But they just send you there anyway. You might as well go to where if it is a problem, you'll solve it. So when did you decide to hire an assistant? So at what point were you like, oh my gosh, I'm going to pull my hair out if I don't get help? When was that?
So you're going to think I'm crazy because I probably should have hired one a lot earlier in the game. In 2016, it was I had my sister's 20. So I had her come in the summer for a few months and do compliance and some stuff that I just couldn't get to, but it wasn't really a full-time assistant.
Mm-hmm.
I only hired my first full-time assistant last October. So after I had already done almost 39 that year.
And when you did 39 million and 60% A, 40% B, how many hours a week are you putting in to do that? And knowing that you picked some of the challenging stuff?
A lot. I would say there was a lot of days I'm here all day. I'll go home, do my stuff with the family and the kids. And then once they're down, I spend another 2 hours maybe on the computer. In retrospect, I should have brought somebody in like at the beginning of the year. I do regret it. But when I got so busy, I actually didn't have the time to hire or train anybody.
Right. That's always the way. It's usually you get to a place where you're literally drowning and you're like, oh my gosh. And then you bring them on. You're like, crap, I don't even have time to show you to help save me time. So, so what happened once the assistant and you got an experienced person. So what happened once that started to work? Like, how did you feel in your business?
Well, it's crazy because most people would say, okay, I have an assistant and now I'm just going to relax a little bit. Immediately I turned back into time to go back out there and network some more. So this year I've already hit like end of June 25.
Right. So you're on track for like 50 mil this year in terms of production. And so another growth year for you. And have you, with the assistant, like, cause you were obviously putting in a lot of hours before, are you still putting in the same amount of hours or are you like, I'm
able to manage it a little bit better. Like I'm trying to balance family time and work life, of course. And last year, my kids were like, Mom, stop working so much, right? Like,
right.
So that I felt that they're young. They're 7 and 5 now. So now I feel like I can manage my schedule a lot better. I'm not necessarily putting in those long hours. I am by nature a quicker worker.
Mm-hmm.
So fast. When we used to have our family business, I could do the work of 2 or 3 people, basically.
Mm-hmm. Right. Okay. You're on CTV Ask the Experts. So for 18 months, you've only been in the business for 5 years, which is amazing. How did you land? I have a guess and that how you landed it. My guess is that it was through some networking event that you met the right people that got you in the door. But I want to know how did you get that opportunity? So
it is somehow I met somebody at the right time at some point in the last 5 years. And what happened last February is me and my business partner left our brokerage and opened up our own office under the Mortgage Alliance Network. And immediately when we made the announcement and we left, what I did was an email blast, and it was actually a video email blast. So him and I did a professional video where we were announcing to everybody what we've done and what our plan is. And somewhere in my blast was one of the managers at CTV was a part of my database, and I didn't even know it.
Mm-hmm.
And so it ended up in her inbox. She watched it, and then they called me to come in and chat, and that's when it all came together.
Oh, interesting. So she saw you on video, sort of you were doing, it was like a resume without you even realizing it. And she said, hey, you seem to be good on video and let's see if you want to do this. And so how often do you do this CTV program?
So it's every 3 weeks in the morning around 9:30 a.m. I pick the topic, I create the content, and I send it over, and then we do the segment. It's about 15 minutes long.
And so how do you leverage that you must leverage the heck out of that? Because I would be like, man, I had a radio program for a while and stuff in my market, and so I'd squeeze that for everything I could get out of it. So what kind of things do you do to leverage that opportunity?
So I think the one thing that's worked the most is I've shared it on all my social media channels. I actually share the segments. Mm-hmm. And that from day one gets me immediate leads. Like not everyone's watching CTV at 9:30 in the morning, right? So by me I sponsor the ads and I actually advertise them. I pay for it on Facebook and Instagram. And just the traction I get from there is amazing. I had a client come in yesterday who told me that her mom watches me on CTV all the time, and her mom told her she has to come see me, which was
That's
awesome.
awesome. You're like, woohoo!
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so and then on these, just out of curiosity, what do you spend? What would you invest in one of those? You get an episode every 3 weeks. Do you have like a budget you set for it?
Yeah, so I usually do 3 weeks of sponsorship, and I spend about $300.
Okay, and then how many views and stuff will you get from something like that?
So they're primarily Instagram and Facebook. I'll get anywhere from, sometimes there's thousands of views on Facebook, and Instagram, you can only see who's liking it, but that goes up to 300, 400, 500 sometimes.
Okay. So, and it's pretty smart what you're doing because there's a new piece of content coming every 3 weeks. And so you basically keep the content that you created in everybody's
sorry, you're
attention.
cutting out for a second.
Oh,
you just cut out.
Oh, so it's interesting that you have 3 pieces. My interconnection is unstable. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, it just cut out. Okay, you're back now.
So it's interesting that you create content every 3 weeks, and then you just keep it. You spend an ad to run it for 3 weeks to keep it on the radar. So it's smart. You also mentioned that you share stories and other content on social. So what do you give me an example of a story that you share that got good traction?
Okay, so every now and then I like to share what I call the deal of the week. So I'll post the story. I'll post a really funny GIF, like that image of somebody jumping up and down in happiness, and I'll tell the story of like a very, very difficult deal that I accomplished. I have an example, a recent one, if you want to hear it.
Yeah, hit me. I love stories.
Okay, so I had a client who he had a previous bankruptcy. We're talking about a very large bankruptcy, over $5 million in the past. And he put an offer on property maybe 6-7 months ago, and he went firm. In his mind, he's always worked in the way that he can get financing no matter what. Like he
doesn't take no for an answer
for a very long time. No, he doesn't. We're very similar in that sense. We get along. But what happened was when he put the offer in, he had gone to a few different brokers, and everybody was telling him, like, you're crazy. This is not getting done. And he went firm, and he extended it like 3, 4, 5 times. Very patient sellers, surprisingly. And he was referred to me by actually 2 different realtors, told him to call me, and I had both done difficult deals in the past for these 2 realtors. So when he came in, I looked at the file, and I'm like, okay, this is going to be very difficult because it involved financing the property, getting a second mortgage on the property. There was a VTB involved, and I had to put collateral on another one of his properties. Okay.
Right.
And so a lot of moving parts. So I went into it like in stages. I'm like, okay, let me first get the first mortgage secured. I need that before I can go shop for the second. And the collateral on his other property ended up taking too long. So we actually restructured it at the last minute to be a VTB. So essentially it was 100% financed, including the VTB. A little bit over 100% actually.
Oh, wow. And so then, yeah. So the vendor was obviously flexible, and was it an expensive property?
Not too much for Ottawa. It was $600K. But the plan with the property itself is to tear down the home, and it's large enough to build 3 singles in a very prime area.
Okay.
So the profit on the property is substantial.
Okay, so there was a plan there, like an exit and stuff, so the lender knows, okay, I can okay, that's cool. Yeah, so no, I think it's great when you share stories or examples of problem you solved, situation, and then people go, oh, I've heard that, and so do you get good traction from those?
I do, yeah. I get a lot of reaction. And that's where I built up on that over the years, where I'm showing them what I can do or what's possible, and that's where I'm getting a lot of referrals from. I absolutely avoid ever posting, call me, here's today's 5-year rate, here's the rate here. I don't do that. I won't do it.
Yeah, that's not effective. That's the equivalent of going to a networking event and saying, hey, here's my card. Call me if you need me. You're like, it's just it's all about you.
Exactly.
And I went to a networking event once, and I was talking to a friend about real estate, and this realtor just walks up to me and goes, oh, I heard you're talking about real estate. Here's my card. And I'm like, get out of here. Like, I wouldn't call you now if you were the last realtor. I would sell it myself if I had to, because I'm just like, I'm so insulted by the fact that you, A, interrupted my conversation. B, could care less about me. All you were thinking about is like you thought you could get a listing, and I was just like, that is somebody with no, I don't know, no people skills. What's low emotional IQ, I guess, is what it would.
Absolutely. And they're only thinking about themselves, and people will read that on you in a second. If you're going in and it's all about you, they're seeing it on you.
Yeah, you can feel people's intention. So, and probably you having a background in a family business where you had to deal with customers all the time and learning how, like, that probably helped in terms of the networking, because you're good at, somebody comes in the store or whatever and you're like, hey, build a rapport quickly. And
Absolutely.
so that was a good, okay. So I'm just trying to think, there was some other questions that I had from, it says you also, and I really appreciate one of the things you did. You're like I want to say you're the only guest that's ever sent me literally like a bio that's like, I'm like, oh crap, this is awesome. So I have it all highlighted like crazy here.
I'm very detailed. Can you imagine how my lender notes are?
Yeah, exactly. I was like, oh crap, this is awesome. So you said that you're willing to take risks and have always invested back into your business. So give me some examples of risks that you've taken and investments that you made. Actually, I want one that didn't work, and then I want one that worked. Because I think I don't want to just share, hey, everything works all the time, and be like Sue. I want to, if you could share one that didn't work, what happened, what you learned, and then one that did.
Okay, for sure. I mean, as far as investments that didn't work, I probably sponsored some events in the past, and sponsorship can be quite expensive, and you're going into a network where you think your sponsorship will yield some results, right?
Are we talking about like a live event or something?
Yeah, like sponsoring a large dinner or a large event. I've done a couple of them, and I find those ones are never an immediate return and not necessarily direct business. Sometimes I do it just for branding, to be honest with you. So in regards to spending money, if I'm advertising or marketing or doing a sponsorship or an event, I don't always go into it thinking I need an immediate deal out of it. I never think about it that way. I always look at doing a combination of multiple things and the potential of it creating a stronger brand and also giving me, potential clients that come through.
So part of it for you, I'm writing some notes here, but you play the long game with it, and you're thinking, I'm building a brand, building my personal brand, and I'm also building my network. And so it's not like, hey, I put $200 in, I want to get, what back. And so what's the one thing that you've invested in that has like defied your expectations or has been better than you expected?
I would have to say CTV.
Right. Well, yeah, I can see, because it gives you a platform and it gives you immediate credibility. When I was doing the radio show, it wasn't on TV because I have a face for radio, as they say. So I did radio, and that would give me all kinds of access to people, and like there's lots of cool things you could do when you have a media platform that you can leverage. So.
Absolutely. And it was a risk because it's a substantial cost. It's not, there's only one other broker in Ottawa who ever did any kind of TV advertising for me.
Right. And so do you buy ads to support that show, or how does that work?
So how it works is the segments and then the 1 week of ads prior to each segment, it's kind of like a package deal.
Yeah.
And I sat with them and I told them, one of the first questions they asked me is, what are you expecting to get out of this? And my response was, I want to build my brand and I want to create, in the long term, a name in the city and hopefully get business that way. And the lady that I was chatting with, she said, that's perfect. You didn't say what 99% of the people say, is that they want to go on and get an immediate return.
Right. And you've been doing it for 18 months, right? So you've done, what is that, every 3 weeks? So 18 shows approximately?
Pretty much, yeah.
Right. Okay, cool. So is there anything else that I should have asked you, or like, I really appreciate you, spending some time with us and talking about the networking thing, which I'm not strong at. I wrote some notes on, Sue's networking advice. But anything I should have asked you that you think our audience would find helpful or useful?
Oh, that's a good question. Not sure. I think, we talked about how I built it. And I think the most important thing when you're in this business is seeing improvements, whether it's gradual or it's large. My motivation was every year I looked back and I said, okay, I'm growing. And I love to continue growing, right? So even now I have still on track, another year of growth, and I don't want it to stop there.
Right. Yeah, you definitely, like, if I look at your trajectory over the last 5 years, it's been every year growth. and you're strategically finding, like, bringing in assistance and help, because often people you're going to hit at some point, if you don't get help, you'll hit capacity and you'll just be like, you can only do so much, right? So it's good that you recognize that. And your assistant is full-time?
She's full-time, yep. And she has that experience. She was with one of the major banks for 30 years. So definitely the transition of bringing her in was relatively smooth. The only thing for her right now, she's like, wow, you can get so much stuff done that the bank could never do. And I'm like, well, yeah, that's why we're brokers.
That's why we do what we do. Yeah, awesome. Well, Sue, I really appreciate you taking the time today and coming on the show, sharing your advice, your opposite advice of build realtor partnerships. But I bet you, though, you do have realtor partnerships now because you've built this reputation of, hey, call Sue because if there's any way to get it done, it's her. So, like, how many, just out of curiosity, how many realtors do you work with now?
Now I probably have a solid group of 10 realtors that send me consistent business. I'm their go-to. We have a fantastic relationship. They don't really have expectations from me other than the fact that they want me to get the deal done and do it well, and that's it. So that was built over time, and that's why I feel that doing it the opposite way and building my base and getting strong in my business and then attracting the realtors naturally was, I felt that was a great way for me to start my business.
Right. Awesome. Well, hey, and thanks again for being on the show and sharing your story and your journey. And I'm excited. I'll circle back to you in a year and see how you're doing again. See, like, hey, Sue, are you still crushing it? Which I'm sure you will be. So
That'd be awesome. That sounds good.